What's going on, everybody? It's the old Weeb, and here to talk to you today about what I think is a great comparison piece when it comes to how to handle death in a story. And I've talked before about how death in the story can enhance the overall quality of a story if done properly. And what I believe is two examples in which one was done gracefully and one was done improperly. When it comes to Borderlands 2 being the most beloved game in the franchise, along with the most beloved character of the franchise, Maya. And in Borderlands 3, we have the untimely death of Maya at the hands of really a stupid incident involving the side character who's the most hated. But let's go into another franchise that had another beloved character die in a more honorable way. But let's get into it. Comes down to Borderlands as a franchise, there is, of course, a number of iconic characters, from Zero, El Salvador, Handsome Jack, Maya, Lilith, Tannis, Claptrap, the list goes on. All these iconic and beloved characters all have comes in different shapes and sizes. But in relation to Maya, Maya was kind of like the poster child of the game, especially when it took off with Borderlands 2. She was the feature in both the trailers, the VR version of the game, etc. Maya has always been at the forefront of this game franchise next to Lilith. And the thing about that, when you have a character die, and you want that to be added, it comes down to all about timing. As I spoke earlier in a different video about when it comes to death, and the characters that we remember from those deaths, they had honor in those deaths. They had purpose behind them. They were either making a great sacrifice, or they were helping to move on to the next generation for those who are in the story. Now, I would highly recommend go watching that video and seeing what I talk about with those characters. But when it comes to Maya, for her to move on to the next generation, and I get it, being a vault hunter is a dangerous job. Technically, life expectancy should be no more than a couple years, but given the fact that we go into a time skip with Borderlands 3 of at least 10 years, if I'm counting correctly, where we get to see both Tiny Tina go from 8 to 18, Maya from like her early 20s to her late 30s, mentoring young minds and becoming helpful in her siren powers, we are now super invested in this character. We want to see them succeed and make it out the mud, so to speak, when it comes to what she went through in the events of Borderlands 2, beating Jack, and trying to kind of live her own life. Not even to move into the fact that she was in a relationship, in a sense, with everyone else's favorite Psycho Creed. And the fact that they had a kind of barrier in language, because, you know, psychos really can't talk properly, but he found a way to communicate, and found a way that was super endearing to both their personalities. To have a character that we have spent hours, especially my buddy who's played every version of Borderlands 2 in terms of True Vault Hunter, Ultimate Vault Hunter, pre-sequels, 1, and you've replayed these games multiple times. He could go on for hours when it comes to these characters. And to me, I enjoy the franchise too. I mean, the reason I started playing Borderlands was Borderlands 2, because it looks fun. I like Zero. Zero's my favorite character, but Maya was best girl. Maya's clearly best girl. And my one buddy who likes Tannis, she's okay. But when it comes to Maya, the blue hair, siren powers, I'm all for it. She just hits that dopamine of goth, pixie girl energy that we all kind of love. So that when Borderlands 3, we get to see, okay, she's even better, because she's had another 10 years to really hone her powers. And she took on this apprentice. Now, Ava looks like a small version of Maya. Like, they really were just trying to, like, kind of copy and paste. And with that in mind, it's like, okay, sirens are very similar in some comparisons to the sirens we see. We only really see, compared to Borderlands 3, 2 with Lilith and Maya. Then we have the whole bad guys of Borderlands 3 with the two Calypso twins, and they were also sirens. But in comparison to all of them, it's like, okay, sirens are kind of like an arms race. They're all very powerful, very dangerous, but the way that they go about dealing with them should be handled with some care. And the fact of the matter is, it seems like they kind of use this as a plot point, or not really a plot point, but a plot device. Because with Maya being as strong as she is, there was really no reason for her to lose in a battle. Because we already saw Lilith lose her powers to these Calypso twins from overestimating her abilities. Because her being the Firehawk in comparison to her old powers, she's not the same. Maya, on the other hand, has had 10 plus years dealing with this, and one would say, well, Lilith also had years of experience, but they are completely different in terms of their play styles, in terms of their fighting styles. We played both these characters, Borderlands 1 to Borderlands 2, and to say that they fight the same would be disingenuous. But the fact of the matter is, why would they go about the business of trying to carry on the next generation by having Maya just untimely die? She can die in a story like Borderlands because, again, like I said, the wastelands in Pandora are dangerous. No one expects them. Heck, the death of Roland still is felt by both us as the players and the cast themselves. I mean, Tiny Tina had a whole DLC totally dedicated to her coping with her trauma. So I'm not saying that death is not warranted or unexpected, but the fact of the matter is, Maya's death wasn't a heroic sacrifice. It was the cost of someone else's stupidity. Aya, God, I can't even say her name right. I still kind of hate her. Ava just went about the business of biting off more than she could chew and made us lose one of the most beloved characters in the entire franchise. And all for what? Not to mention that game's litany of problems comes to the Vault, which is just not feeling important. Like, compared to Borderlands 1 and 2, where we were actually like main characters in the story, here we were just kind of like sideshows. Nope, I can't think of much of Zane, Flack, Mose. Like, hopefully Borderlands 4 gives them a little more love, but in comparison, those characters were not as iconic as the two from Borderlands 1 and 2, and hopefully we can get better improvement. But the sulliness, the bad taste in our mouths from that game, hopefully will be mended in Borderlands 4. But yeah, the death of Maya is just a waste, in my opinion. But let's get to Aerith. I don't know how much to really gush about this character, because Aerith is the ultimate girl next door. She was the I can not fix her, but let me protect her. The soft sweetness of her, always kind of speaking of a sense of naivete, because she didn't really have the most sheltered of lives, but she definitely did not have to deal with many of the burdens that come along with the world of Midgard. And on top of that, she had such a nice disposition to everything, to everyone. And I would highly recommend anyone, if not everyone, play Final Fantasy. Be it Final Fantasy VII, VII Rebirth, Remake, Crisis Core, anything involving this franchise, specifically with this kind of character, please invest time into. It is 100% worth it. But I want to talk about how, given that the remake is something for those who have already played the original game, we know the story. And if you clicked on this video, I hope you know the story by now. But Aerith dies at the tail end of essentially is the second part of the game, because the original game came in 3 discs. And in relation to the remake, they did a similar thing where they're doing 3 whole games, which I do appreciate the extra content. But there's always a sinking feeling with me when it comes to this moment, because I knew what was going to happen. But what they did with the remakes is they kind of added extra context and also changed some aspects of the story. By sheer fact of that, and seeing how things play out differently, just in Midgard alone, I kind of had the idea of like, okay, maybe, just maybe, we're gonna save her. We're gonna have an actual chance to not have the sweetest girl in video games die a horrible death for the sake of protecting the planet. Because to familiarize yourself with the story, for those who don't remember, Aerith is an ancient, and as part of that, she's one of the people who could find the holy materia in order to get this magic to protect the planet from Meteoria, or Meteor as it's known. And along the way, her, Cloud, Tifa, Barrett, Red 13, Vincent, who I'm still mad we couldn't play as in the remake, but luckily we'll get him in the 3rd game, all traveling around trying to figure out both what Sephiroth's doing and what they can do to really stop him. And the things that kind of get forgotten along the way is that Cloud, for those who should know, is a mix of him and Zack. Zack being his best friend during his time in Soldier, and Zack fell in love with Aerith. Aerith fell in love with Zack. And as a result of the events that happened in Crisis Core, the reunion as well as for the remake, highly recommend, we get to see the fact that thanks to the Genova cells and everything with the Sephiroth cells, honestly, Cloud has become kind of a fusion of both him and Zack. And thus, the blending of his emotions, the blending of his feelings continuously haunt him. His memories not being his own, memories bleeding into Sephiroth's memories because of the effects of the S cells. We see this all play out in real time because we know that Cloud, as a himself, loves Tifa.
But how does one separate the kind of blending of those memories, those feelings, when everything is explicitly tied to who you are as a person? Because for Cloud, he kind of exists in this weird limbo of not really knowing what's going on and who he really is, for a multitude of reasons for those who are invested into this franchise. But again, the point I'm making with this character breakdown of just talking about both Cloud and Aerith and their relationships in terms of like how they got here, it speaks to how invested we got into this character, that even without taking into account the remakes and like the years on end, just in comparison to when the game was first released and the love and appreciation that Aerith has garnered as a character since 1997 speaks volumes. And the fact that she is one of the most well-known and well-beloved and most tragic character deaths speaks to the fact that not only was it handled properly, but it felt like it mattered. And the thing in comparison to Maya, her death doesn't feel like it matters at all in relation to the cast, to the story. And you could say, well, it came to Ava, but Ava was part of the reason we have this issue in the first place. And ultimately, there's two ways, if not a multitude of ways, to handle character death in any kind of story. In relation to this comparison, I just think that we need to understand that people who did Borderlands 3 and probably people doing Borderlands 4 don't seem to really care about the deep richness of their story. You could say because they're two different kinds of games and they don't need to go as much in detail. I just think that's lazy writing. And I like to make this video in terms of really speaking to a comparison to two franchises that I enjoy playing and I've played majority of the games, if not all of them, and just think we should expect more from writing teams, especially when trying to make established characters' deaths feel impactful, feel necessary to the story. Because killing off a prominent character in any work of fiction needs to have a reason. I've talked before on this channel when it comes to the idea of character deaths and how death can actually enhance a story. But the flip side is also true. Like everything, a death in a franchise could undermine a story, or just throw away all the goodwill you had by just killing off a character. Looking at you, Last of Us Part 2. So I want to end this video off by just trying to let you guys know that when it comes to important, impactful moments in your story, especially in the world of video games, and you want to kill a prominent character, or at least make their death hit home, please do the groundwork, do the foundational work to make us actually care, not only about the character, but the story leading up to the death. Because the fact that the story goes on post Maya and Aerith, but how we feel about that story is entirely different. GG's, guys.